mentioned, I'm Anusha Naicker, and I'd like to welcome my panel of roses today. So I have a panel of just ladies. How powerful. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies. I believe we're going to be chatting about quite a crucial topic, and that being mentorship. So let me start by just giving you an opportunity, and perhaps we can start at the far end, give you all an opportunity to help me understand why this subject of mentorship is so vital in enabling particularly young women.
My name is Kim Jade. I'm a proudly Zimbabwean immigrant. I left my family and my home to come here and chase a dream of getting an education. And I actually have my honors degree in social work and psychology, but I went into the world of media and fashion and entertainment. And for me, this topic is particularly important because where I come from, it's traditional and conservative. And as a young woman of color, when you say you want to be a model and a TV presenter in Zimbabwe, they're like, huh? What? What do you mean? We don't have those role models that came before us to lead the way. And now there are some incredible women from my country that are doing these things. Danai Gurira, for example, who we all know from Black Panther. But I didn't have that role model, that big sister, that woman that I could look to that say she's also from a small town in a country that has a very interesting and controversial history, especially right now. And I think the opportunity to be around fellow entrepreneurs, boss ladies themselves, and be able to learn is so important and so vital. So I'm grateful to be part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Hi, ladies. It is an absolute privilege to be sitting on a stage like this. Very humbling to be sitting in a room of this caliber, because this is, as far as I know, one of the only Women's Day events in South Africa, actual physical events, where all of the precautions have been followed, and we have the opportunity to do something like this. So I'm very excited to be able to talk, and I think the reason perhaps why I was invited is because I have a very different journey that I went on that only started after I'd had my kids. So I'd started in an industry as a pharmacist, I'd specialized in operations, I was working in a warehouse, and I decided that I wanted something different for my life. And my daughter was my catalyst for change, and she motivated me through her struggle with her health, that I needed to be an example and step up to the plate. And so I entered Mrs. South Africa, and I think when I stood on that stage and I saw what was possible, then the world opened up to me. And that process in itself was one of mentorship, one of sisterhood, one of collaboration. And I think from that point and onwards, and everything that I've done, nothing has been done alone. And I've literally stood on the shoulders of other women. And I think because I started later, I have a unique perspective. I didn't start in an industry when I was really young. I've had to be mentored by older and younger women. And that for me is a really big stereotype that I want to shatter. And that we're not ageist in our approach to cross-generational mentorship. But there are women younger and older that are able to teach us things and show us the world in the light that we've never seen before.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me and to come and share. I guess I'm a different person now. My name is Kiolebohile Motaung, as you've indicated. But I'm a professor, but a very weird one. A lot of professors. They are there writing papers, supervising students. For me, I am the one who turned my research idea into commercialization rather than sitting there at the university. And on the other hand, what was actually hurting me is seeing most of our students graduating, wearing red gown, looking good, but they're not going to get a job. Hence, I decided to be an entrepreneur so that I train my students in a manner that they don't just do research, but they must be able to take that research and become an entrepreneur out of that. And hence, I always said, I'm a weird species because no one, as professors, they are able to do that. And I'm excited to come and share how I managed to do that. And I'm also excited that most of the students that I'm training, they are female. And some, they've already started having their own company where I'm proudly to say I'm also mentoring them so that they follow my footsteps. So most of them, it's like becoming a norm now. Everybody wants to be Professor Matau. They don't want to go to the industry. We want to be like Professor Matau, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
I think for me is I was fortunate enough to be in the media industry early on in my life. I was lucky to have started earlier than most. Fresh out of university, my first job was in journalism. And the lessons for me that have prepared me for my future careers came from that first physical job of being a journalist on the field. And I came from a background of a father who was surrounded by journalists. And in those days, what happened is senior journalists from Joburg, when they were being developed, they would be sent down to Port Elizabeth and would have these round tables discussions with all of these men and these women who were in the field and talking working journalism. And it influenced my decisions on what I would become. Then my direction changed as I went along. Somebody picked up that I'm good at this, I'm good at that. Doors were open for me, and I was lucky enough to be developed and change direction. And if you look at my CV, you'll see how many things I've done, and you wonder why. Why was she in fashion buying? How did she end up in journalism? How did she end up in TV presenting and TV production, etc., etc.? But the main thing for me is the lessons that we learned are the lessons we need to be able to share with the new crowd, your pubbies of this world. Because for me, it needs to be an inside-out direction. It needs to start with you, how you set your own goals, how you take it forward, how you take responsibility for yourself. Most importantly, being kind to yourself when mistakes happen.
Excellent. Thank you.
So great.
Prof. Mataung, I'd like to circle back to you, with a quick question. Something you said that, I was quite intrigued by in terms of innovation and how you have sort of, repositioned what it is you're doing in a unique manner. And I just want to ask, there are various conversations that are happening, various programs around mentorship. Various private sector companies run internship programs, government does, civil society does. Do you think many of those are being followed into some sort of actionable outcome? Is there some kind of actionable outcomes or activities or goals that we're reaching from various of these structured mentorship programs on offer?
Thank you for that questions. I'm going to answer them in different ways.
Sure.
At the university, you become a mentor, kind of a supervisor, where you are going to supervise the student. But when you go to the industry, then you also have to get a mentor who is also going to mentor you. So you end up having the two together. But what is just crucial, what is important, why sometimes it's lacking in terms of whether the government are following it or not, is because of you're not being told that you need to have 20 mentee.
Right.
You're not being told that you have to have whatever 100 mentee, and then so that they can say, I've given you money, you must go and start training this. Mm-hmm. But what is also crucial, what happened to them after you've trained them, those mentee? I mean, you can bravely and said, I have trained 100 of mentee. What are they doing? Mm-hmm. Where are they? Mm-hmm. I know that is also is their responsibility. It's sure. Not you as a mentor, but this is what is also crucial. On the other hand, is how do they choose? Are they aware how to choose their mentor? Are you choosing your mentor because he's a celebrity,
right,
and you want the person to mentor you? Are you choosing your mentor because of your mentor understand what you're doing? Let me give you a typical example. I'm in the biotech space. I've got a company, and it's biotechnology. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's also very intimidating because I'm the first. Being a female, biotechnology, white dominant is not easy.
Right.
But when I was looking for a mentor, because I needed somebody else to mentor me, I didn't go and get somebody who doesn't understand my industry. I had to get somebody who understands my industry. Again, as they mentioned, it was a male, and I had no option. I had to be mentored, but in the same industry that the person understands what I'm doing so that it can take me through. But the problem is with the upcoming, when they choose mentor, they don't actually know what they're choosing.
Right.
Most of them, that's where the confusion is. A person wants to choose a mentor because I saw you on TV. Don't you want to mentor me?
Yeah.
You know, I saw you on TV. You know, you are a model. Don't you want to mentor me? It doesn't work like that.
Right,
So
right.
I think there must be kind of a curriculum that one can take while you are actually teaching from kindergarten to primary up to university, just to teach them how to choose your mentor. And that is what is missing. We talk about programs of mentor-mentee, but how is that being designed and how has that been taught from the beginning?
Right.
Let me pause there.
Thank you. Prof, you touched on some really key points for me. I myself being a skills development professional, so I see the link that you're making between the actual training, between curricula and mentorship, because there's a golden thread, right? And so I'd like to transition to Kim. I mean, you mentioned that you come from Zimbabwe, and now obviously you reside here and you've set up your own production company.
Yes.
What do you think, I mean, help me understand the link between actual skills development and mentorship, and how powerful is that package?
For sure. I think a lot of people that are in the same industry that I'm in can relate to the fact that when you are in entertainment, you're on stage, you're, you know, emceeing or rapping or in that kind of space, we aren't given the tools, or we don't have the tools, we don't enable ourselves with the tools to, number one, be financially literate, be able to manage your own money, even your taxes, something as simple as taxes. So many celebrities fall into that trap of now they're being caught up by SARS because they're actually not managing their money, or they've paid someone to handle it, you know, things like that. And I think actual tools and skill development is so needed, and we don't have it. We invest in our look and our work and our presence and our social media, but in the things that really will help us when we're no longer on stage, when we're no longer popular or trendy or cool, we don't have those tools, and we honestly don't know where to reach out to ask. It is very intimidating to see a professor, a businesswoman, a Mrs. SA, and be like, can you help me? Can you teach me? How do I learn those tools? Even starting a business now, I don't know a female woman of color that I can reach out to, I feel like I have access to be like, how do I start a company? How do I work on accounts? How do I, it's all so new. And so the truth of the matter is you do end up reaching out to men that are in the industry that have the experience and the knowledge. So I reach out to my father, how do these things work? It's so critical and it's so vital, because in entertainment, you need to be so much more than just a current, present factor or, you know, personality. We do need to have longer lives and be able to work and sustain ourselves long when we're off screen, when we're off stage, when we're off the sporting fields. And that mentorship is needed. It's just like, how do we start? Where do we start? Where do we go? Luckily in the academic space, there are those programs. The government have set those up. In entertainment and fashion, that doesn't exist.
Right.
Women, the stereotype is a woman finds a rich husband, especially if she's beautiful, and he'll take care of her, and he'll bless her, and she'll be comfortable and have children. What about us that don't want that? What about us that women, we want to be our own bosses. We want to create legacies. We want to be media moguls. You know what I mean? And I hope that by starting these discussions, we can set up those platforms and those foundations where we have someone to reach out to.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. Nicole, I think I'd like to transition to you. Kim mentioned that her dad was a mentor. And often, you know, I find we've gone through our lives and there's been either a person or a pool of critical people that have mentored us, but we haven't necessarily labeled them mentors. You know, we interchangeably use the word role model here and there. You know, so, I mean, I'd like for you to help me understand, if you try and identify these key people in your lives that have sort of been pivotal mentors, you know, along key milestones, what are the, the values or the characteristics that immediately come to mind to help me understand some of the characteristics that good mentors would possess?
Yes, Anusha. I think I've been very deliberate in not calling them mentors, because I think there's a lot of stigma around mentorship, where it has to be somebody older, it has to be somebody who is near perfection. And then it almost has to be a formalized program. And that way in education, it is like that. I think there's often tutors and mentorship roles where it is formalized. But what I've tried to do is find people that I respect in various industries and then develop relationships, but based on humanity. Because at the end of the day, a mentor is never perfect. And I'm never going to agree with everything that my mentor in that area says. So in every area that I want to pursue, I try and surround myself with people that are killing it in that area. And sometimes it is men. And certainly my mountain journey started there. My mountain mentor, Sibusiso Villani, the first African to summit Everest, he was the first person to take me on my first mountain journey. And since then, I've been deliberately trying to build relationships with women climbers. And this year, actually 2019, started a relationship with a 4 women who are heading up Everest. And it wasn't my show. It was about saying, well, they're going on a Mont Blanc climbing expedition to get skills on ice climbing. Yes, what can I do to be part of that team? How can I come and learn from you? How can I be surrounded by you? How can I learn from your attitude? But I don't have to agree with how they run their businesses or how they raise their families. But that's been a slow process to actually find. You're not going to find them straight away. And sometimes it's not as easy as saying, can you be my mentor, and can I see you once or twice a week or once a month? It's not always going to be that formal arrangement. Certainly in one of my businesses, the Impact Hub, which is forming groups of connections between strong and powerful women and the men that support women, it's been about definite collaboration, crossing multiple borders, the men coming in to help and support the women, and then strong women mentoring each other across all ages. My business partner in the Impact Hub is 25 years old.
That's amazing.
And I learn more from her, I can tell you now, than she learns from me.
Fantastic.
So I think it's just to try and deconstruct some of those boundaries and create for me, certainly, it's been creating a casual relationship, but a deliberate one with mentorship.
Sure. Thank you for that. I mean, Prof, Nicole mentioned, deconstructing some of these boundaries. I like to call it, breaking down some barriers. And I'd like to ask, do you think that, that fluid, flexible type of mentorship approach works? Or do you think that there is a need for it to be very concrete? Let's specify the rules and engagement, the rules of engagement up front. And sort of enter into it's got to be sort of documented that we meet every Tuesday. Does it need to be that concrete, or is this fluid, flexible approach as effective?
I'm going to give is 2 ways. I mean, this is in the industry part. In the university, it becomes completely different, especially when you supervise a master's and a PhD student. When you start supervising a master's and PhD student, because now as a supervisor, you're going to become a mentor. But now what happened, you get into an agreement that to do, this is what you expect from me, and then this is what I expect from you as a student. So that before you can even start with the topic, start with the research, you need to put that. Quite often we always see supervisors and students constantly fighting and coming and report. It happens so many times because they don't agree. Right. And when you keep on asking them from the beginning, did you guys have a service level agreement between you and the students? But sometimes then the mentor will say, no, I didn't do that. Then I said, but then there's a problem because the student who is a mentee has got the right to ask you as a mentor. But one of the things, when the students are also choosing their supervisor, because it's not very clear, is a gray area there in the university. Students sometimes don't know how to choose their supervisor. This is very important. That's what I always tell. When you're going to choose your supervisor, you choose a university or you choose your supervisor, Google that person, Go and find out who did Professor Motaung supervise. Ask from the other students so that you can have a background of who Professor Motaung is, so that you don't end up going to get frustrated. Don't go and supervise and get a supervisor who constantly working and always complaining. Oh my God, this university is making me so tired. Oh, this university, that you've got a problem. You have just decided to get a problem. And there's always a problem with that. Or you go and get another supervisor, just it took her or him 10 years to finish a PhD. It's not my problem. You must supervise me. I want to finish my PhD in 3 years' time. So that, again, is a problem. Hence, service level agreement is crucial. When you come to me, I said, you're doing your PhD, yes, how long? When do you want to finish it? I must ask you, because so that we must work into that goals. It's not my goal, it's your dream that we need to finish that. So in that case, it's very crucial that they need to put the two together. Then when you go to the industry part, again, as I've already explained, get somebody who also understands your business and somebody who is also going to expose you. Remember, that person is more experienced, will be able to say if there is a conference or a workshop or whatever opportunity for funding, the person will be able to help you and say, listen, there's an opportunity, let me start helping you and taking it further and further like that. Again, you're not going to agree and disagree. I've done that with my mentor as well. Mentoring me. I said to, it was a him anyway. I said, no, this thing is not going to work. We were actually fighting for finances. And you must understand. Yes. And I'm a medical scientist, but wanted to say, no, I can do this, I can do this. I said, no, I cannot do that. Remember, this is my company. You are mentoring me, because I'm just asking you to mentor me, but I'm not asking you to take over my company.
Yes.
Because that was also one of the things, because being a male dominant, they thinking now they can just take over and say, no, I'm showing you, you're going to have a problem when this and this and happen. And sometimes I always say, let me rather have that problem so that I can learn from that problem. And after learning from that problem, I will be able to know how to solve that problem. So those are also the issue in terms of when you are in the industry part and then when you are in the university part, because those are the two things that they completely differ. And hence I said quite often students go and study doing PhD, they don't, most, and 80% of them, they realize that, I shouldn't have not come to you to supervise me. I've really made the biggest mistake in my life because they didn't go and do a background check. And I always say there's nothing wrong as a student to do a background check of the supervisor so that you know you're not going to end up fighting between you and the supervisor. And this is the kind of things that happen. And it's so sad that when you complete your PhD, you don't want to see your mentor. Have you ever heard the students? I don't want to see that man or that woman, and I don't even want to go to that university. I hate you. You don't want that. Yeah. And quite often I've had a lot of students. I'm working at TUT, and you ask them, who was your supervisor? Professor so. Why don't you come and visit? Is that professor still there? So you become very careful that you don't want that when you are mentoring, because even myself, I'm very careful how I also treat my mentee, because remember, they are also adults at the end of the day.
Excellent, got it. Yeah, no, thank you.
Sure.
So let's transition over here. I want to make a pretty bold statement, all right? And it's a pity that I don't have any men on my panel today. But I think speaking about private sector engagement is critical when we talk about mentorship and its relation to skills development. So I want to talk to you specifically about private sector engagement, and I want to make a bold statement in that when I look at the private sector and when I look at the top, when I look at the board level, when I look at the executive level, I want to say to my eyes, it looks kind of pale, stale, and male, all right? And that's a pretty bold statement. And I think, I'm a strong advocate for finding ways to transition, particularly young women, to these board and executive level in the private sector. What role does mentorship have to play in enabling that?
I think let's take it a few steps back. As a people, as South Africans, there's never been a lack of role models for us. Who are we? Where do we come from, as Jessica was saying? Sizalwa ngobani. If we remember who we are and where we come from, there will always be people there for us your Wendy Lou habits have been, growing up, a Wendy Lou Habe for me was one of those people I looked up to. Today I look up to Nolita Fagude, who's just written a book called Boardroom Dancing. So the value of leadership, as well as the development of mentorship, is changing. And it's changing because there's more access to information. You are able to Google people. You in the past, we never were able to do those things. You are able to Google, get information, empower yourself, read, contact people like Katie Mohammed, ask questions, get a lot of people. But also for me, mentorship has become a two-way street now. It's no longer a one-way street, me mentoring a mentee. The mentee teaches me as well, because we are now in a technological age where some of the things that they know, we were not exposed to, and we're learning from them. And their fights may be similar to what we had as our own fights, but Rose Must Fall was not a mistake. It's very comparative to the women who marched to the union buildings so many years ago. So it also has its own transitions, but I think young women today are luckier because you have people like Katie who set up organizations like this and allow people to get exposure and get to learn and be empowered. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I hope you don't mind me inserting myself in that statement, because I think it is probably the most profound thing that's been said here today about private sectors, the pale, stale male scenario, because it is something that needs to change. And oftentimes we're waiting for that dynamic to change itself, and we're calling on them to change. And there is a large responsibility, I feel, that lies with them. But as young women, as women, I feel that we have a responsibility to change that dynamic purely by inserting ourselves into those environments.
I think so.
Owning
How
our
we do
space
over
in the
time.
private sector, and also owning our space in mentorship relationships, even in those circles, especially in those circles. Because if you want to change it, you sometimes have to insert
so we're
yourself
fine,
and
we're
own
on
your
time.
space there. I know for myself,
Have you
I've
got an
often
in-ear?
faced the imposter
Have you got the
syndrome
in-ear?
in every
No,
industry that
earpiece.
I've tried to get involved in. And
okay.
especially when you're facing, as a young woman, coming up into a scenario like that, how do you insert yourself when you feel this imposter syndrome
'Cause
that
they'll
I don't
speak
have
to
a
you in your
chance? Am I ever good
They'll speak
enough?
to you in your ear.
Will I ever have a shot at being in a space like that? Yes, you will. And sometimes you need to actually develop relationships with those circles and mentor in those circles. And just like you said, to have that two-way street of mentorship where you might be learning skills from them, but they're learning attitudes, they're learning change, they're learning progression from you.
Excellent, thank you.
Obviously, Johanna McCall.
I mean, I think
Yes, yes,
we speak, the benefits of mentorship are often glaring. You know, they're easy to identify, they're easy for us to sort of acknowledge, but they're common challenges, you know, Kim, particularly, I want to say, with young people who are mentees. You know, I often find some of them could be disengaged, some of them could be disinterested, some of them could find that it's my mentor's job to do, tell, you know. And, I mean, yeah, you're not in agreement. Have you experienced this? And what kind of solutions do you think one could propose to these challenges?
I think I have to 100% agree with that statement. With the younger generations, our generation included, there is a sense of privilege and expectance. I need handouts, help me, give me. I can't do it because this person didn't help me. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It is a privileged attitude, and I mean, I think all we can do is acknowledge it, right? And until you acknowledge it and recognize it, you can't move forward and you can't be better. I do come from a very old school kind of family where they were very privileged and my parents worked really hard. But once I got my education, they were like, you're cut off. We've done our job. We've given you an education and love and support and discipline. But from here on, it's you know, and my family's wealth and success is not mine. And that was something that was drilled into me very, very young. And so when I came here and decided I'm going to start my own life, I'm going to do this on my own, it was incredibly challenging. And I went from living in a really comfortable life to living in a share house with 9 other immigrants from Congo and Nigeria. And I think that hustle and that struggle, and my parents, as hard as it was to see me struggle and sometimes not be able to afford food and things like that, that made me the person that I am. And I think our parents should be as hard as it is, because our parents came from real struggle. You know what I mean? They knew real struggle. And it's that difficult job to be a parent where it's like, I can't give you everything. Sometimes I need to pull back and let you fall and let you learn, because then you take responsibility for your own life as an adult. So as the youth, we really need to recognize that. We didn't fight in wars. We didn't, have to march just to be able to vote. We have those privileges, and we need to recognize them and use that as a strength, as a foundation for power, and to only grow and to add to, the legacies that our families have built. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Let's circle back to Nicole and Prof in the middle. What can you tell me about corporate mentoring? What have you experienced? What are your thoughts on corporate mentoring?
So I started my journey as an academic, as a pharmacist, and I worked for a number of corporates, small, medium, and it was never deliberately introduced in the workplaces that I was present in. I think it was always this hunger for knowledge on my side that led me to, like I mentioned before, these informal seeking out of beneficial relationships to learn. But I do wish that there had been a deliberate undertaking on the part of the companies that I worked with, because there's such a scarcity mentality when it comes to information, and Pabi mentioned it earlier with opportunities, and we're trying to shift away from that. But even in corporate, I don't know, Prof, how you feel, but I felt like if they share too much of their information, that I'll one day take their job. And here you are, you're on your own, you better just go figure it out on your own. But don't figure out too much, because then we're going to support you even less.
Hello. Okay. What you have just said, you are really right. What in terms of corporate, because if you got a boss, and then with me, my experience when I completed varsity, I work in the lab, and I already had an honors, and my boss only got a junior degree.
Wave the finger as
Now,
that. I'm with you.
sorry. Now, that was already a problem, because this person must now mentor me. I mean, he's my boss, and he must always show me things. And sometimes he will start making a very weird remarks and said, I didn't do an honors, but I can do this. And forget that it was he, by the way. He has been working in the lab for more than 20 years. So he's supposed to know those things. I mean, and those are the kind of things that you end up in corporate. You have to fight yourself and not to be bullied, but just to also to show them that you also understand. It's not like because you don't have an experience and you need to be taught things, and then the person must always pass those remarks in terms of, you don't have an honors. Why did you do an honors? Because he's got a BSc, and then I got a BSc honors, and said, why did you do an honors? Because now you cannot do 1, 2, 3, 4, or we're doing the same thing. And on the other hand, that becomes a problem in terms of the person mentoring you, because the person is thinking that you are going to take her or his own job, or her or his own position, by the way. And by then, you're not interested, because the only thing that end up making him easy is when I start telling him that, Mina, I'm not going to keep on operating this machine for 10 years. That was, in a way, get off my back, but in a very smart way. And after that was the best medication. We get along so well now, because he was aware that I'm not going to operate this machine every time, test blood sample for 20 years like him, and which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. He must test our blood. But Mina, I'm not going to do it. So it has really solved. Up to now, we've still talked, and we don't have, because I had to have a way on how I'm also going to make myself comfortable. Because one of the things that I didn't want is to go to work, and when I think of that man, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to go to work because of that man. Yes.
Thank you. Let us take that conversation further. I can't help, and I'm sure our audience here also, and the rest of our panel, can't help but hear that there certainly is a common thread about gender that's also coming through. Very clear, right? And do you find that, there is this gender aspect that certainly comes through in mentorship, and how does it impact mentorship or the success of mentorship?
I think that there's two things about it. For me, is being able to identify allies in whatever space you're in. And within that space must include both men and women, because there's something that men are able to do on their own that we have lessons to learn from.
Sure.
Men fight in the boardroom and chat afterwards. We fight in the boardroom and we don't speak to each other for months.
We do that.
So I think for me, what helped me was being able to identify who those allies are.
Sure.
And the one thing I learned very early in government, when I was working fully in a government department, was don't go into a meeting without having identified the people who are going to be on your side. Because as you pitch an idea, somebody must be there to say, seconded, supported. Those are the tricks of the game. You never go into a meeting cold. So at board level, at executive level, at team level, those are the elements you need to be able to identify it. But from a mentoring point of view, for me, I think throughout my career, I've been doing it unconsciously, as you said. It's not something you sometimes always consider. But everywhere I go, my team knows when I tell them that why I'm here, there's a reason why I'm here with you at this point in your life. And our paths are crossing. And for me, the best I can say to you today is, I want to leave you here better than you were before I came in. That's my goal at all times, which means that your heart is in the right place. They accept you as the person who's going to be helping them move on to the next stage of their lives. But yes, the gender dynamics will remain. There are bosses who just don't listen to women in meetings. And there are bosses that we've had to deal with who are even as far as rude to you. And you have to adapt to some of those things. But as women, if we hold each other's hands and we gather around each other and we find tactics to fight those men who are against us, right? But align yourself more with the he's for she's, I call them.
Right.
The he's for she's. Because those are the men who will guide you and will. I love Nolita Fakude's book because it tells the story of when I had this type of problem, I had this group of men who could advise me on how to tackle it. When I had this problem, I had that group of women who can tell me what to do. Sure. So it's almost a navigation, a conscious and constant, consistent navigation of what you need, when you need it, where to find it.
Sure. Thank you. Verlaine, Diane, shall we do another try?
Oh, man.
We're so desperate to hear you. Still not able to, sorry about that. Kim, you're one of my younger panelists, right? And we've gotten into this little chat about gender now that's come into the mix or into the fold in relation to mentorship, right? And again, I don't know if this is a controversial question, but I kind of want to ask, as a young woman, we've already acknowledged that the large majority of mentors are men. How intimidating is that? And sometimes, do young women feel like there's almost a favor to be paid because this male in a very senior position is mentoring me?
So glad you asked it. I was like, she's going to go there.
To ask the
I'm
question.
going to go there with you. And even, in our industry particularly, it's like she must have slept with someone to get that job or to get that role or to get that promotion. Or she dresses extra feminine, so she must, be like implying something. And it's super frustrating because I don't ever believe we should live in a world where as women, we should dim down our femininity. If you want to be a little bit sexy, you can. It doesn't take away from your education, your brain, or your talent. And when we do look to mentors, it's really difficult because there is that if I help you out, maybe you'll help me out. Or if I help you out, maybe you'll do a little something. And it does happen. It's a reality. And if we act like it isn't, we'd be lying to ourselves because especially as a young woman, worse if you're a young, attractive woman and you're not married, the sleeping with the boss thing is a thing that is, it does happen. And so when you genuinely are a hardworking woman that genuinely wants to learn, genuinely wants to grow, it is frustrating when you're met with that kind of, sure, I'd love to help you. Let's meet for drinks later, and we can discuss business at this. I'm like, no. And when you challenge it, it's, oh, what's your issue? Why are you being so uptight? Why are you being such a prude? This is how men meet for drinks. Why are you making it a sexual thing? It's super frustrating. And I really wanted to touch on something that you brought up, because the woman's voice is so often silenced or dulled down, or you're being over dramatic, or tone it down a little bit. How we're raised, especially in African culture and women of color, is you're always taught to be silent and graceful and soft-spoken, and don't upset the mood. Don't upset the mood. Don't talk too loud. Don't be too combative. Don't brag about your accomplishments. As women, we're not taught to do that. But men, oh my word, look at my car, look at my house, the promotion, the millions I made. Dare we try to do the same thing? Oh, she's bragging. She's showing off. Actually, no. We really need to encourage our women to unapologetically be proud of what they've accomplished. Because you did that. You did that despite the gender issues. You did that despite the challenges, despite the fact that we're raped, beaten, abused, consistently on a daily basis. And the fact that we continue to win despite all of that is something we should brag about and be more proud about. And when we're invited on stage to talk about who we are, this is who I am, actually. Thank you, tweet about it. As opposed to being like, I made the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and I'm very humble. It was very exciting. And I did. I just wish that we were more proud of it. And when we did that, instead of women being like, oh, what a biatch, women are like, yes, queen, you did that,
Fabulous.
Yeah. I'm getting more comfortable now. Like, I can chill a bit. Yeah.
Did you want to respond?
Yes, I would say thank you. First of all, thank you. I have actually personally been challenged as well by women who will look at your success and say, but why was it that relationship with that guy? Was it, and it's these finger pointing and sometimes even the subtleties. And we like to preach sisterhood, but are we actually practicing it? So I think that you really touched on it nicely when you said that second person in a meeting who's got your back. That's a perfect description. And for me, I like to call it edification. Because when somebody stands up in a room and says Forbes 30 under 30, can we respect that, please? Like, that is ridiculous in the best way. I think that if we edify one another more, sometimes we're waiting for a man to do it for us, which is unacceptable. When somebody walks through a door, I want somebody to say, oh, do you know who she is, what she's done? And her presence enters the room before her, and we do that for each other.
When we speak about mentorship, when we speak about some of the challenges that we brought, today, they're not unique to South Africa. They're not unique to just us in our country, right? And we're obviously playing on a global sphere. We're participating on a global platform. And what is it, if I can ask Prof. Motaung, what is it that you think is happening globally with mentorship? What direction is it taking?
What is happening globally, even if you go overseas and look at mentor-mentee mentorship, you'll still find that most mentor who are mentoring women, they are males, and that is just happening globally. And why I'm saying so is because it was also my experience. I did my PhD, University of California, UC Davis, but again, my supervisor was also a male, and a lot of us who were students by then, it was also male. So it's females where we've been mentored by male. So it's kind of something that really needs to be changed and needs to be changed.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but I've just been informed that we are going to wrap up our panel, because we've spoken for quite a bit now. And so I want to thank each and every one of you, honestly, absolute gratitude from my end for joining me today. It was so lovely to chat to each of you. I've learned something new from each and every one of you, and I certainly hope to keep in touch. So thank you, ladies, for your time. Thank you all.